Hello, everyone, and welcome to this live Q&A with the team behind the new Into the Dark installment. It's delivered. My name is Perri Nemiroff. I am a huge horror fan. I'm a huge Blumhouse fan. I'm a huge Into the Dark fan, and I'm also a big fan of the director I'm about to introduce. It's Emma Tammi. Welcome.
Perri, hey guys, good.
Let's make us a little bigger here. There we go.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
We still have that handy hashtag in the corner of the screen there. So if you guys want to jump in and ask some questions, just use that hashtag right there. And we're going to take questions all throughout the broadcast. So get on it. And I hope you guys enjoy. Emma, I get to start with you first, though. So one of the big things that I always hear about Into the Dark from the director perspective is that it's essentially like jumping on a fast moving train. It just comes your way. You got to jump in and go with it. Is that the experience you had when you first took on Delivered?
Totally. It is a fast moving train and you got to get on it and go all in, but it's a really fun ride. And the crew and producers and executives are, obviously on this year round, and it's their baby year round. It was our baby for this episode. So it was such a dream to get to collaborate with them on this one.
And what is it like when you're first offered something like this? Are you specifically given this installment to direct, or did you have the opportunity to say, I think I am best suited for this holiday or that one?
No, I think it's different for everyone, potentially. This one I didn't write, so it was something that they shared with me and that I pitched on. And I think thematically they saw some similarities maybe between my last film and this and thought it might be a good fit. So I think in other cases it's a writer-director potentially bringing something original to a pitch, and the episode can come about in any number of ways.
So between this and The Wind, I do have to ask you, what speaks to you about stories that involve pregnancy?
Well, I don't know, Perri. It's so coincidental in some ways, and yet to peel it back a little bit more, I think it is some motherhood and obviously just the life cycle in general. I think is a universal theme that I find, interesting. But as a woman, I also find the idea of giving birth, which is something I haven't done yet. Certainly something that I'm both fearful of and excited of, about potentially doing, and have, witnessed women in my family or friends, go through that process, which is such a range of crazy emotions and highs and lows and challenges that vary immensely. So it was really, it was fun to dig into those themes in both of those pieces. And certainly this one more intensively.
What were some of the biggest differences between shooting The Wind? And I'm not sure if you've shot anything else between now and then, and what's the status of the other things you have brewing, but what would you say is the biggest difference between the production schedule on an Into the Dark installment versus a traditional feature like The Wind?
Well, The Wind we were doing on a fairly low budget with a very small crew, and we were out in the middle of nowhere in New Mexico. So that was a much leaner production, and in some ways it was similar in the sense that we still had to move quickly to make our days. We still didn't feel like we had enough days. I don't think any filmmaker ever does, regardless of what the schedule is or what the budget is. But with Into the Dark, it's a much bigger show, and it's, the crew's larger, and the pace of it is different. Am I echoing?
You sound pretty good to me.
Okay, I'm echoing to myself, which is a nightmare, but if you're not hearing it, I'm okay with it.
It sounds pretty good. And the exciting thing about what we get to do right now, I know it stinks that we're all, we got to stay at home right now, but this is a great opportunity to be able to share a Hulu release like this and to be able to celebrate it live with everybody. And I think you should be pretty proud of it. And because we get to do it like this, we also have the opportunity to welcome some of the cast shortly. So make sure you guys have some questions coming for the cast as well. So everyone out there should know that we did encourage everybody to watch Delivered before this conversation started. So be aware, spoilers could come out throughout the episode here. So keep that in mind. We do have some questions from the hashtag coming in, and we're going to kick it off right now with one from Jaden Marvel, who's asking, what was one behind the scenes challenge that is little known by fans?
Behind the scenes challenge. Well, anytime you get into special effect territory, and certainly with the more gory scenes, I think the resets are always a challenge, and particularly in relation to not breaking up the momentum of the performances. So this is like such a credit to Natalie and Tina, who are going to join us shortly, but they just stayed so intensely in their performance zone, even when we were having to reset and take time to get all of that stuff back together for the next take. So I think was one of the bigger behind the scenes challenges that they rose to.
While we're waiting for them to join the conversation, I was curious about their process. Is there anything about how the two of them like to prep for these scenes? Because this whole movie is the two of them going toe to toe. So is there anything you always had to keep in mind for Natalie, and something else you had to do to make sure Tina was getting everything she needed to jump into these wild scenes?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question for them for sure. I'm sure they have answers that I'm not even aware of. But I think what I found is it actually would change sometimes from scene to scene. And, that could be because the day was different, and because, they or I or someone on the crew woke up on the different side of bed that morning. There's so many elements that kind of dictate the temperature on the set, even in a particular scene. Maybe lunch was extraordinary that day and it gave everyone a little extra pep in the afternoon. Who knows? But I think, with something like this, which was such dark material, it would really hit Tina and, Natalie and myself, and I think everyone at different times. So certain scenes, I think we were all really processing the deeper tones of this in different ways. And so, yeah, it was just kind of gauging the temperature day by day, scene by scene.
You joke about the food thing, but it's a meal can completely change your vibe for the rest of the day.
Real.
So what is your on-set vice? That thing that maybe you don't have regularly day to day, but when you're working, you just got to reach for that thing.
I have such a thing, and it's Cheetos. And I eat a bag after lunch every day on set. And then if it's a really stressful day, I can dip into a second or third bag. So Cheetos hands down.
Do you eat Cheetos when you're not working?
No. And I would never allow myself to. They're delicious.
Everyone's got their thing.
Oh yeah, it's totally the thing. And they're the perfect combination of crunch and salt and cheese and all the things you want when you're just stress thinking and processing, and it's great. Highly recommend.
What is it like assembling your crew for Into the Dark? Because I know they have a team that often comes back to keep working from installment to installment, but I also know there are some people on this production that you've worked with before.
That's true. So Lynn Moncrief, who's an incredible cinematographer and who was the DP on this episode, shot The Wind with me, which is a film I did previously. And he has done, oh my gosh, I don't have the count exactly, but I think 7 or 8 Into the Dark episodes. So he's been like a veteran, and is one of the rotating DPs on this series. So I knew he was going to be shooting this going into it, which was so amazing, because I was really looking for the next thing to do with Lynn. And then Ben Lovett came on board to do our score, and he was the composer for The Wind as well, and just so talented. And we ended up doing the score and all of our sound design remotely because of this situation. And it was so helpful to have a pre-existing relationship and an unspoken language with each other, because I just knew he'd knock it out of the park.
Oh my, I have so many follow-ups. Going back to Lynn first,
yeah.
On set, was he kind of like your go-to when it came to Into the Dark production tips? Did he know the whole process and make sure you were up to speed all the time?
Definitely. You nailed it. And particularly in pre-production, he was like, so this is how this happens, and this is how this happens, and this is how we're going to get the most out of our day. And I just totally, used him as a guide in those, those pre-production days, which was so helpful. And obviously he already had a relationship with the crew too.
What do you think is the best Into the Dark tip you got the entire time you were making this? Like, and what advice would you give to another future Into the Dark filmmaker?
Well, I think the schedule's short, and the episodes are long. They're almost feature length. I mean, they're all about 80 minutes, more or less. And so you're kind of out there making a movie, but it's also a TV episode and running under that kind of schedule, which is typically shorter than a feature. So, I think managing expectations of what we were going to be able to get done in a day and trying to get a grasp on that beforehand so that we were able to make some changes to the script and really not bite off more than we can chew and end up with, not enough to cut at the end of the day, which is of course what you need. So I think that was probably the most helpful tip.
So what's an example of a scene where you guys found yourself, I don't know, fighting the clock in some sense, and maybe some happy magic came out of it? It's like you're super bummed you didn't get to do that thing you planned, but something better grew from it.
That's a good question. I mean, I think one of the things that Lynn and I were constantly trying to do when we were shot listing was really make each shot be able to tell its story in and of itself. So again, oftentimes when you have a little bit more time, your shot list is really often, other than a wide establisher, is telling pieces of the story and you're seeing it all. And I think we were really trying to make sure that every angle was telling the story as much as possible. And I think there were some happy coincidences that came out of that in terms of angles that we found. And I'm trying to think of like if amazing serendipity, I think, happens on sets every day. I come from a documentary background, and it's certainly something that my eye gravitates toward, is like the thing over here that I wasn't predicting being something that is meaningful. The cat that we used made this crazy groaning demonic purr sound that was a total surprise, and we really leaned into that because it was the creepiest thing any of us had ever heard. And I think all of us in Video Village with our headsets were like jaw dropped the first time this cat started meowing, because it's not a meow.
Wait, it's a gremlin. So none of that was done no. In post, like created in a different way.
No, and when we were in post, I really hope this doesn't sound like some forced sound effect that people think that we laid in, because this is the real deal. This cat is a star.
It works. It was the intended effect, but as a cat owner, I'm like, nope, cat can't. My cat does not make that sound.
So creeped out. I know.
I absolutely love it. So we're just about to welcome the 2 stars of the movie, but I do see a question that I really want to get to.
Oh, great.
Because you know how I feel about The Wind, and I'm really happy that Mickey J is asking this right now. Mickey's saying, I know this is about Delivered, but can Emma talk a little bit about the process of making The Wind?
Yes. Oh God, what can I say about it? I had worked with the producers on a documentary film prior to The Wind, and they were branching out into the scripted space and shared the script with me because they thought it might be a good fit. And the documentary I worked on with them was shot in New Mexico. So I think they had a sense of how I, use space to tell a story, which of course The Wind was so much about the vastness of the land and the wind and, loneliness, obviously. And I read the script, and I felt like, even though it was a period piece, there was something that felt fresh and relatable and contemporary about it. Because I felt like it was speaking to me, and it was connected to experiences that I had had. And I was so interested in how Teresa Sutherland, the writer, had used these real experiences of, frontier homesteaders of that time, and then expanded them, those stories into this supernatural horror space, which I thought was just so fun and gripping. So that's how I got involved with it. And we were off and making the movie. I think I read it in the spring and we were making it in the fall. So it was a pretty quick turnaround.
Job well done on that and this as well. But for everybody out there, if you haven't seen The Wind, please go give it a watch. Now it's finally time, though.
Sorry, not to cut you off. I was just going to say, it's about, cabin fever, as is this a little bit. So we're all experiencing that in a very real way right now. And it's still escapism, though. So I think it's a good time for it.
That is one thing that I found really fascinating about this entire process, rewatching in particular, certain horror movies that I thought I knew every single detail about, and how powerful certain themes can come through. And because of what we're going through right now, I'm just connecting with movies in a new way. So The Wind is definitely something that can do that to you. All right, let's bring them out here. We have the 2 stars have delivered. With us, please welcome Natalie Paul and Tina Majorino. Get rid of this guy so we could see more Natalie there. All right. So, but just a reminder to everybody out there, use the hashtag #AskDelivered if you want to get some questions in here. I'm so happy to see you guys.
So happy to see you. So cool. Nice to meet you.
You too. So, Tina, let's start with you on this one. And just generally, why Delivered? Because I know it's been a little while since Scorpion came and went. So what is it about this particular script that made you say, I got to jump back into something right now?
When this script came to me, I was really looking for something that was going to challenge me in a way that I hadn't been challenged before, which is, I try to approach my choices in that way of like, what's actually going to push me to become a better person and a better actress. And the fact that when I read this script, I couldn't put it down, and it scared me to death. The idea, the prospect of playing someone this complicated, and I knew it was going to be tricky. And as soon as I had that feeling in my chest, I was like, I think that this is something that I just have to at least attempt to go after, because it really is, when you think about from the perspective of an actor, we're kind of strange in the sense that like we really want material that we can deep dive into and completely immerse ourselves in. And there's no way you read a script like this and don't feel that way. So I absolutely had to go after it.
Is there any particular part of her that you would say was maybe the most daunting challenge of the bunch? Is there any one element that you were most nervous to tackle?
There were like 7 of those things.
I had a feeling.
But I think really for me, it was about making her a grounded, realistic, unique character. I was most nervous about like, how do I navigate really going there and going to those dark places without it being cheesy or a rip on something else, or, I really wanted there to be that anchored point for her. And that was really intimidating because obviously the stuff that she does in this film is completely outside of all of our wheelhouses. Like we're not doing those things. So it can be quite daunting to think about like, oh, you have to do torture scenes and you have to do all of these different things. How do you make that real?
You sell it quite well. Her motivation is front and center the entire time. So you don't agree with what she's doing, but you understand why. And that's probably one of the most important things with a character like that.
Yeah.
So Natalie, we were talking about this earlier, your first horror film.
Yeah, definitely. That was one of the intriguing things about the script when I read it. But I also felt like it had a lot more to say than just, I'm going to scare the living daylights out of you. It was just sort of like a really cool mix of genre and sort of psychological themes. And I actually had done a short film. I've done a short film that was kind of like, it's about vampires in New York City. It's pretty cool. It's called Suicide by Sunlight. So I had like a little bit of that, like, I guess, like taste for it before. And I just really enjoyed the fact that like Val was flawed, even though she was like a typical good person, that she was flawed and that she didn't necessarily deserve to Mother of the Year, but she fought for her version or her right to be this child mother. And I just like really loved that fight. And yeah, just like two women leading a film, duking it out and showing that it's a really good and entertaining fight to watch.
What was it like for the two of you to meet for the first time? Because I know the Into the Dark experience can be very, very swift. So did you guys get that opportunity to get super comfortable with each other before you jumped into the craziness that happens in this?
I feel like we had to.
I mean, it was so fast, wasn't it, Matt? It was like, I bet you.
It was so fast. I remember like clear as day, like meeting you for the first time.
Yeah.
The like screaming that immediately happened because we were like, we're about to do this. You know? I'm about to do this crazy thing. So I thought that was like I felt like instantly we were just like in it, and I don't know.
I remember when we went to the table read, what was so fun about it was that, like, obviously we're showing up to a table read as ourselves. So, and Natalie is an amazing woman and so fun and light and joyful and all those incredible things. But like the idea that we're probably not, I don't know, like I had never done a role like this where I would have to duke it out with somebody. So the thing that I'm proud, and you can tell me if you agree or disagree, Natalie. The thing I'm most proud of us for is like, we sat down day one and we were like, look, we both want to really bring this to life. We both want to kill it. We were very open and honest with each other about like anything that you need, anything that makes you uncomfortable. Like, let's keep an open communication at all times. Like, if you need me to mess with you in scenes, you can tell me. If, you know, I need you to do the same. I just so appreciated like having the experience of meeting someone and then literally 5 days later, just having one of the most intimate conversations that two human beings can have. And be like, this is great, let's do it. And it really set the tone for the shoot for me, because I felt like I trusted her implicitly, just like I trusted Emma, to really, like, the three of us really worked closely together to make sure that all three of us were feeling good and supported. And it was a blast. It was really fun.
I could tell that you in particular were just like having a ball with this. And one of the vibes that I really liked about the movie, because I'm a huge Stephen King fan, is you got to make the connections to Misery and Annie Wilkes here. So Tina, was that character on your mind, and how much did you guys discuss the connections there?
We really didn't discuss that at all, Emma, right? I mean, I mean, there are obvious undertones, but I purposely wasn't watching that movie or other horror films just because, like, I wanted to respect the process that I was going through with Emma and Nat. So it's like, the past couple of days when we've started pushing before it came out, I was like, I was hearing from people the connection to Misery and stuff, and it's being very Kathy Bates, and like that intimidates me because we're not pulling from that. I was just trying to do the best job that I could do, and it felt like pressure.
The whole time, though, all I kept thinking was, and I know how sensitive folks can get about remaking classics like that.
All right,
you could totally put your own in a role like that.
Well, I that is just an amazing thing to say, so thank you. But man, what a good time. What a good time.
It certainly looked like it was. So I get very hung up on character details and backstory and all of that. So Natalie, one question I had for you about what Val's going through here is, did you guys ever discuss why she cheated on Tom, what drove her to do that, and what her relationship was like with Riley prior to the events of the film?
It's interesting because Yes, we did. We talked about the sort of the nuances of the relationship between Val and Tom and Val and Riley, and where she feels fulfilled, and how identifying with whether either one of those guys is the father, how it impacted her relationship with the baby. So I think that was talked about, and talks about what kind of woman she was, especially there are a lot of with the four of them, there are these like binaries all over the place, and just what kind of woman Val was, to be this person who had been working and herself and wasn't necessarily all the trappings of motherhood weren't necessarily obvious to her. It wasn't always, it's like, yeah, I'm a mom, but what does that mean? Do I have to change my whole personality? And I think that played into her relationship with Tom, and what he might have expected of her as a mother versus what Riley might have expected. And so that was always like just in the soup, you know what I mean? It was in the gumbo in the scenes. And I don't know, should I say, like, we decided not to always necessarily like come up with like, because I think there's a lot of things that the characters don't know either. Val, I don't know if Val really knows for sure until the baby's born, maybe, who the father is. So that is kind of working in the scene. So that, I think that those are all the things that we were coming up with,
You feel it. As much as I'm someone who always wants like the specific answers and the reasoning behind everything, as long as those themes and ideas come through, and they certainly do, that winds up making it a far more kind of thoughtful viewing experience.
Oh, good.
We had actually made some tweaks to that backstory really right before shooting, because Tom's character, the backstory was originally that he was a workaholic and just not connected to Val. And we thought then it would be so much more powerful if in fact he was showing up, he was present, and it was her own fears, anxieties, and insecurities about becoming a mom, that she was really grappling with. So it was less about whether or not this affair had actually, brought about the baby, or whether or not her relationship with Tom was falling apart. It was really, gave Natalie the full reins just to be struggling with her own internal dilemmas.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I like that change quite a bit. That comes through very well. We have another question here from the hashtag. This one comes from Brie Jandez. And Brie Jandez is asking, I know some directors have done more than one episode of Into the Dark. Emma, if you could pick any other holiday to tackle in a horror movie.
Oh my God, that's such a good question. Of course, I'm blanking now on any holiday. I think the New Year's ones are really creepy. I don't know why. Like, there's just something about New Year's that I feel like there's so much to grab.
I'll always take any excuse I can get to continue plugging Midnight Kiss, which is an excellent Into the Dark installment too.
There you go.
So Tina and Natalie, for both of you, I'm curious, what do you guys find more difficult, doing some of the more physically demanding scare sequences, or moments where it is more mental and them internalizing some of their fears?
I would say the definitely the mental,
Mm-hmm.
because at least for me, I love doing stunts and I love all the physicality, and it was so fun choreographing like our fight scenes with Natalie and like really going there. I think it's so much easier, at least for me, to externalize something than it is to really get there here and have it translate in those moments. Like, that is just, that's delicious to me. I love that. That's definitely more of a challenge. And especially with the scenes that we had together, it was important that it felt, it didn't feel over the top. And it's like, in order for my character to really be fully fleshed out, like, you do have to make room for each other in those moments. It's like, I want Natalie's moment to hit, like that needs to be there. So it's more of like emotional choreography that that gets complicated, but it's yummy. It's really fun.
Same for you, Natalie?
Absolutely. I mean, the physical aspect with the bump was really fun to explore as an actor, just like how my weight was shifting and just sort of the weird like things that happen when you have a bump and like your body starts to tell your brain you're actually pregnant. Like it's weird. Like you start rubbing the belly when there's nothing there. So that was really fun, but definitely, especially with this piece, like just like Tina said, we wanted to ground it, you know, like we wanted to feel like it could maybe really happen, and that there are women, that this pain is real. If the situation, it feels outlandish or you know, just like a movie, the pain that these women felt was extremely relatable and real. So and somebody out there feels that, you know, in some way. So just grounding it was really our task, and you know, and it was really fun. It was tough, but it was fun.
It looks like they put you guys through the ringer in this movie. We have another question from Scuba Girl, who wants to know what scene was the most fun to shoot.
Honestly, I would say like the end. That was really fun. Just with all the fight choreography and the stake and the cat and the mirror and the blood.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a doozy. And we were actually, you were saying about time. I think we were pressed for time that night.
Yes.
Every night. Yes, definitely that night.
It was crazy, but it was so much fun. And I think actually really helped us both really go there so intensely.
Oh, yeah.
We were fighting the situation, but like the clock as well. So that was really dope. I love that night. That was really fun.
That was a really fun night. And I remember that's exactly right, because of the time pressure as well, I feel like Natalie and I were just like holding each other's shoulders like, all right, we're gonna go there. And it's like before every take we were just like just like trying to get there as quickly as we could, and it made it so fun. I passed out when we got home from that day.
It's, you know, it's so funny. Like sometimes when I mentor students out here in New York, and they're like, "How do you cry in a scene?" You know, and I'm like, sometimes it's the fact that you have to remember that the wastebasket goes against the wall, and then the line, and then the punch, and like the sheer remembering, having to remember things will make you want to cry because you're so stressed out. Like trust me, like sometimes the scene will like just take you there because you're like, I gotta get this take out in like 5 seconds. That is still in there in addition to the imagination.
I'm glad you guys picked that scene because it really is so well executed. And oh man, like the steak stuff just gets me. I'm fascinated to no end by like makeup effects and gore and all of that. So I do have to ask a question about the poor cat. And this question comes from Ian Wilder, who wants to know, like, what is actually in there in the toilet? How do you make that cat?
Oh, I mean, that was our special effects department making the strangest gooey guppily thing I've ever seen. And we actually first saw that, the thing that's in the toilet that she's referring to, that piece of prosthetic, I guess, is, I don't even know how you would describe this, like silicone gerbil of cat gut mush, but we saw it before it had any blood on it. And I just remember walking over to where the special effects station was and looking at it for the first time and going, ew. It was like so realistic looking and awesome. So yeah, that was all special.
I remember the day that they brought do you remember the day that they brought the tests with the blood in it and it was in all those cups? And I got really excited because I was like, oh, Crafty's bringing treats. And then cat cups. And I was like, oh, okay.
Right. And then there were like mucus plugs all over the set all the time, like different kinds of mucus plugs, which is
mucus plug.
Seen the episode.
Oh my God, that day, that was the worst. I was like, I'm going to be single forever.
Oh, I thought you were talking about like some sort of VFX tool that they use. I know exactly what you're talking about now.
Yeah, and they were making versions of a mucus plug, which is, it's gross. It's, it's a natural process, and that's beautiful, but it's also really gross. And we really wanted to lean into the body horror. So we were like,
we did.
Gross with it. Let's show the mucus plug. But then we had like 50 versions of the mucus plug, all of which were pretty disgusting.
So can you tell me about a different kind of birthing scene, the one that happens in the vision earlier? What's the behind the scenes of making it look like something's, crawling in your stomach, and then also the breakthrough part?
Yeah. Well, that was go ahead, Nat.
No. Go ahead. Okay. I was okay, so there was first we did it like regular. I had the bodysuit on or whatever. I think I was just like sleeping. And then they did this amazing contraption where the bed was sort of like dug out. Like this is what you're asking, right? I'm not like
that scene.
Secrets. And I was like squatting. And there was someone else in there. It was a whole thing. I got real close to the crew, real fast. Because I was like squatting. There was like maybe 2 people down there in between. And then I was sort of like scooped up underneath, and we were really trying to make it look, continuous. And they had, it was incredible. I was like wowed by the craftsmanship. It was just like, there was a lot going on. And there was I don't know if I'm missing anything else.
No, and that was also like day 3. So, we were all just still getting to know each other, and it was like, okay, let's dive into this now. But it was so fun. And, like Natalie said, like we had someone underneath the bed kind of puppeteering the movement out of the belly, this prosthetic belly. And then, just thematically, it was our little, tip of the hat to Alien for sure. But also, just, it was so nice that the first horror element of the film was actually just something going on in Valerie's own head, that it was coming through. Dreams are like, used throughout this film intensely. And this is the first dream that we see. And in some ways it's the most graphic, actually.
Those dream sequences too are just very well placed as far as building that character by showing and making you feel rather than telling you everything about what she's going through and what she's struggling with. So I'm glad you incorporated all of those. This is a very, very specific detail, and Emma, you might have nothing to do with it, but that statue that sits on top of the box with the information about Jenny's past, the rabbit, kept catching my eye over and over and over again. Is there a reason why the rabbit is guarding the information?
I think that there was actually like that rabbit played a little bit more in the story in like one of the original versions of it. We had so many versions of the script. I'm not sure from whence it came, but it felt like, especially that moment that Val is looking at it before she goes to the box. And Natalie and I talked about this extensively, actually, this idea of like almost dead eyes, like a toy, like looking at you, or, she's surrounded in this foreign, creepy house, and these cheerful elements or these inanimate objects take on, an element of the horrifying for Val because of her circumstance. So, Nat, maybe you can speak to that more, but I remember talking about that a lot. And certainly those
definitely. I think that the house in general, she's a little. When everything is fine, it's cozy, it's sweet, it's in the country, it's nice, and then when everything is revealed, it becomes this that much more sinister. And yeah, all of the little trinkets and the pillows and the throws and the wallpaper, all that makes her feel much more trapped in Jenny's idea of what a mother should be as well.
Yes.
Because I think, Jenny has a very strong idea of that, and that's essentially what it's sort of. What I love about the script in general is like how those two things like reflect on each other. And I think, in her normal life, everything's pretty modern, and everything is pretty sleek. So it's just sort of just that dichotomy, that contrast, just kind of like tugging at her and pushing her and just adding the pressure so that she finds that resolve and confidence to
Totally. And those toys, these are all like trapped elements of Jenny's childhood that she's never been able to escape. So she's like, Val's being thrust in Jenny's adult world and what she's trying to make, this home she's trying to make for this unborn child, but she's also trapped in her childhood. And I know, Tina, you were really channeling that in her performance as well and her backstory.
Yeah, with all of I really love all like set deck and wardrobe, and all of these pieces are so important to building a character in my eyes, because walking around your character's space has to feel like her space. And I remember the first time that we went into that house and I did see all those trinkets. You remember Nat in that room upstairs? They had like the weird little bathtub, and these were real antique little things that someone had actually drawn creepy drawings on, and like very interesting pieces that were in the room. And for me, when I was walking through the space, it's like, obviously reading the script, that Jenny is a very troubled woman. But the fact of the matter is that she's not a woman. She's actually trapped being 14. So it's like you're walking into a twisted 14-year-old's house. It's a 14-year-old playing house, how she thinks an adult would decorate, how she thinks, a child's room should look. But it's based on a very outdated perspective, but that's where she's trapped. Like, she can never get past that point. So all of those elements, like, that's a really good point, Nat, because when you're in Valerie's apartment, everything is so adult and beautiful and sleek, and like it is a reflection of Val, like pretty much having her stuff together. You know what I mean? And then you go into Jenny's house and you're just, it's very different.
So as we have to wind down here, there is no way I am ending this without asking you what it was like working with Sully the cat. How was it having Sully as a team partner?
Okay. So I have never in my life met a cat like Taj. I was very intimidated because I've had a couple of bad personal experiences with cats, and I'm also like allergic. So there was that element where I had to take allergy meds and like whatever. This cat was a star. Like, I can't describe it to you. He's so smart. He was awesome. I mean, I was definitely afraid of him. Like, all of those sounds are real. Like, I could not get over it. That first day he was on set was when I was telling him that the table is not for kitties, and he was just, he's amazing.
That cat better get all the gigs after this movie.
I mean, yeah.
All right, let's take one more from the live chat before we say goodbye. This one's for, oh boy, I'm going to butcher your name. I apologize. Dahlia Guerin. I think that was a noble effort. Can you tell us more about working with your director in order to create a compelling scene? So what does Emma do to ensure that what you guys are churning out has that compelling, thrilling vibe to it?
Nat, you want to go first?
I mean, honestly, every day when we had to go there, whatever we were doing, we talked about it a lot. It was such a collaborative, open environment. I think that was the foundation and the basis for everything that we did. And I felt like you don't always find that, that's not a given. And the fact that we were able to be so open and collaborative was such a gift. And just having that was so great. And it was just set a great, pattern for every single day on set. And we talked, we gave each other space when we needed it. And we, with me and Tina, like if we needed space, we gave it to each other. And, and if you needed, like you said, like you were saying earlier, if you needed more, on your coverage, I was there for you and vice versa. Totally. So just that amount of trust and collaboration was really, I think, the secret sauce to.
I agree with that, because it's like, it is really rare to have that kind of a relationship with a director. And the thing that I so respect about Emma is that there was never any ego going into anything. Like she sat down with Nat and I before we started shooting, and we dove into our separate characters. And then each day on set, what was so nice was that it was like, I felt so safe every day to bring up my ideas. And even if it wasn't good, like that open communication that Natalie was mentioning is so important. And because Emma set that tone, then it sort of made it so much easier for Natalie and I to give that to each other, because that was the vibe. And the other thing about, at least for me, creating Jenny is that I love the fact that Emma never focuses on making something likable or making something packageable, which you can run into a lot in the industry when you're trying to tell a story. Like there are some people that it sort of sucks the real magic out of something because you're too worried about how something is going to come across. Like Emma every day was really about, who is this person? And let's stay true to that. Just like Natalie was saying with Val's whole journey, it wasn't about capturing a story about a perfect woman and a messed up woman. It was about two people from two completely different worlds and navigating that. So all of those little details, like you were saying, who's the father of the child, like Emma doesn't approach it focusing on that. She focuses on what's important. And that really helped me to stay focused and to not think about all of the fluff that doesn't matter. It helped me really hone in on what we were trying to accomplish.
This is why I love covering your movies, Emma.
Well, it really helps when you're working with actors who are invested in their characters and their performance, and it I think it really shows in both of their work. So it's just helping facilitate the platform, but these ladies brought it every day and under, crazy tight time restrictions and all the things. But I think, as they both said, like the pressure cooker also brought out really, really cool moments and at times even added an energy to things. So.
Absolutely.
Well, congratulations to all three of you. Job well done. I hope you're celebrating the release of it right now. And to everybody out there who knows someone that might like Into the Dark and might like Delivered, tell them it's on Hulu. Go check it out on Hulu. There's no better weekend to watch it than Mother's Day weekend. So get on it, guys. Again, thank you all for your time today. And I hope you're all staying safe. Same to everybody out there. Have a good one. And keep an eye out for more Into the Dark coming your way soon.